Hall & Wilcox acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands on which this podcast is recorded. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and to all First Nations people joining us today.
Hello and welcome to the Cultural Inclusion Podcast. I'm Shaun Idowu, a partner at Hall & Wilcox, and I'm delighted to be your host for this new season, which we are calling What's in a Name? In this series, we'll be talking about names. We'll be speaking to a range of people in the legal industry about their names, how they got into law, and the significance of their names and what it means to them when their names are spelled correctly, pronounced correctly, so on and so forth. So whether you're listening from the office, out for a walk, or on your commute, thank you for joining us. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by two lawyers from Hall & Wilcox, Ash Vielhal from our Banking and Financial Services team, and Stephen Lim from the Corporate and Commercial team. Ash and Stephen, you're also the KIC Cultural Inclusion Committee leads. So welcome. Yes. Great to have you with us on the podcast.
Thanks, Shaun. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Shaun. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Let's get started. We might start with you, Stephen. Tell us about your name. Stephen Lin, is that the full name? Do you have something else?
Yeah, so it's my first name and last name in English, but I do have a Chinese name, so I'm from a Taiwanese background. And so my Chinese name is Ling Xiaoru. And Ling is, of course, my surname in Chinese. It means forest. And Xiaoru is two characters. So the first character, Xiao, basically means filial piety. And that's like a pretty important concept in East Asian cultures, basically meaning respect for your parents, for your elders. And I imagine that's a value that my parents and I think my grandparents had some input into my name. They felt that was quite important to have in my name. And the second character, Ru, it's quite an uncommon character in everyday conversation, everyday use, but it pretty much refers to the Confucian school of thought. And so I imagine they had some kind of vision of me being like a scholarly, kind of gentlemanly individual. And hopefully I lived up to that in some way, shape or form.
Why are you laughing? Surely you've lived up to that expectation.
I hope so.
You said Lin Xiaoru.
Yes, Ling Xiaoru. That's right.
Ling Xiaoru. And on your birth certificate, is it Stephen? Is Stephen something that's on your birth certificate as well?
Okay. It is on my birth certificate. It's both my Chinese name is basically my middle name on my birth certificate. So on my driver's license, on all official documents, I have it there as well. It has been Romanized, of course, so that it can be written in English characters. And a funny sort of story about that is there's different ways of Romanizing Chinese characters into Latin script. And so the most commonly used system these days is called Hanyu pinyin, and that's what they use in China. And the way that you would spell the xiao in particular is different in China compared to Taiwan. So in Taiwan, they have a different system, which I believe is called Wade-Giles. And so you would spell xiao as H-S-I-A-O, as opposed to X-I-A-O in Hanyu pinyin. But then my dad decided he would do something completely different, and he decided to do S-H-I-A-O. And I imagine that it probably helps native English speakers because I think the SH sort of sound is a bit easier to visualize and to pronounce than HS or X. So in a way, I'm grateful to him for that. Yeah, but that is how it's spelled on my birth certificate and ID documents.
Oh, amazing. That's great. Thank you. What about you, Ash? First of all, am I even saying that correctly?
Yes. So my full name is pronounced Ashray with a double A, but yeah, I go by Ash just as a sort of shorter name, and my name means shelter. My first name means shelter. And yeah, a bit of a funny story, similar to how Stephen was talking about whether he fits the description of his name and whether he's lived up to it. I was actually named because, and again, this is hearsay, this is what my parents have told me, I wasn't around, but they were on a walk once and they saw there was a building and the building's name was Ashray, and they were like, if we have a son, maybe we'll name our son that. And here I am. So I was named after a building. I had a bit of a growth spurt when I was 15 or 16, so hopefully I'm also living up to my name.
Providing shelter for friends and family from the elements and just shelter from life in general. What about your surname? How do you pronounce that?
Velhal.
Ashray Velhal.
Yes, correct.
And you go by Ash?
Yeah, Ash, not fast.
Ash. Okay.
Yep.
Shelter. And then what does the surname mean? Does that mean anything in particular?
I'm actually not sure.
Didn't research.
It's not a traditional sort of Hindi word, so I'm not so
Okay.
sure what it means, but yeah.
Okay. And do you have any nicknames?
Yeah, Ash is probably the sort of main nickname that I go by, and then my friends and family call me Ashu, which is just,
Ashu.
yeah, Indian culture is pretty much you get the name, you cut it in half, and then you add a U at the end.
And is
And
that
that's
sort of like a
that's
sort
the
of
family
endearment?
nickname. Yeah. And
Oh,
that's how the family nickname comes about.
yeah. Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Ashu does sound quite sweet. Does
Yeah.
anyone at the office call you that, or no?
No, they do not.
Okay.
They do
What
not.
about? Well, maybe they will now.
Maybe they will after this. Yeah. Great minds think alike, Sean.
We'll
Maybe they
see.
will after this.
What about you, Stephen? Any nicknames?
Not really, no. Of course, in the team, obviously, Steve is the natural nickname for Stephen, but the problem is there's already two Steves in the team. And the funny thing is, in the office, we sit about within 3 meters of each other. So you can imagine the confusion that might arise if someone's like Steve and you have three very confused people looking around at who's potentially calling them.
Yep.
So, yeah, obviously Steve is. And of course, with my Stephen being spelled with a PH, sometimes when I'm ordering food, I'll just say my name's Steve because it just lessens the confusion. I get called Stefan quite a lot, and that also,
Of course.
yeah, can be another source of confusion. So, yeah, no nicknames, but feel free to call me Steve, or I think Jackie, partner I work with, calls me Stevie sometimes. I get
Nice.
that too.
I've
Well,
heard
Stephen,
people say. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, Stephen, if we take the Indian approach, you could become Steve. We could do that for you
Love
around
it.
the office.
Yeah.
What if you're, I'm really curious about this as young lawyers in the industry. I know that when I started in law, I've always gone by Shelm. That's my name. People struggle to pronounce it. I've been quite malleable, I would say, in terms of what I respond to, and perhaps been less courageous initially about correcting people when they mispronounce my name. And I'm curious as to the younger generation of lawyers, whether you have those same hesitations, or whether if someone does get your name wrong, Ash, do you bother to correct it, or do you just go, oh, let's just move on, I know what they mean?
So it's not so often that people get my name wrong, because if I introduce myself as Ash in a professional context, it's pretty straightforward to get right. The only time is sometimes they might spell it incorrectly. So they might spell it with one A as opposed to two A's. And again, that's usually when I've just introduced myself in person or on the phone and I haven't seen that it's spelt with two A's. So I'm usually not in the first instance so inclined to correct it, because they usually will pick it up themselves when they see how it is spelled. But yeah, Stephen, I'm not sure if you've had a different experience.
No, I think it's similar for me as well, because I feel like these days with email signatures setting out our name, it's quite rare that someone will spell your name wrong. But then again, it does happen. When it does happen, I'm pretty chill with it. I'm easy. I think as long as I know that it's not, we don't normally assume that someone does it on purpose or out of malice. So yeah, I think especially in a professional context, I usually would just let it slide. And sometimes it is just a like slight slip, because like partners I work with, sometimes they do accidentally spell it with a V, and that's not intentional, and they do know how your name's spelled. It's just like maybe they're in a rush or something like that.
Yep.
I wonder whether it would be different perhaps if you didn't go by Stephen, if you went by your, did you say the pinion name?
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's hard to say because I've gone by Stephen for my whole life pretty much, and I don't recall there being an instance where I had to have, or maybe there was one or two, but yeah, I think that was so long ago that I don't quite recall how I responded to that. I think with my brother though, he enrolled in his high school and they spelled his Chinese name wrong, and of course you want to correct that because that name will appear on all your reports and all your formal documents. So yeah, I think for me personally, I do find it important for people to spell each other's names correctly, but I think in a professional context, sometimes you have to be realistic and understand that people are in a rush, and as long as they don't mean any malice or any harm by it, then sometimes it's okay to just let it slide.
And just to add to that, in a professional context, it can also be tricky when you're a junior and it's a client that may have spelt something wrong or mispronounced it, because you feel a little bit out of place in correcting them. Whereas I think if it was an internal person, even if it was a partner, I would be very comfortable with correcting them. I guess that's a testament to the culture of our firm, but it's not so easy when it's a client or someone more senior to you outside of the firm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And it's the same with judicial officers, or
Yeah.
perhaps if you're working with silk on a matter, I tend to think, oh, how to pronounce my name is not why we're here today, so I'll just roll with it and move on. But then in a work setting, I agree, Ash, we're very good at Hall and Wilcox with putting in the effort to try and get it right and noting when we get it wrong. So I think that's commendable of the firm.
Yep.
Do you think it's the same with you're both co-leads of the Cultural Inclusion Committee here at Hall and Wilcox, and you've done an amazing job with building this committee, and it's growing in size every single meeting. Do you think that your experiences with your names are reflected in the rest of the Cultural Inclusion Committee or the other diverse people in the firm with diverse cultural backgrounds? Do you think that they are equally confident in making corrections to their names when it's mispronounced, or do they just roll with it and it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that reminds me of an experience I had when I was a grad in 2023. And at that time, either I was just about to join the committee or I had just recently joined the committee. And I was sitting at my desk and I overheard one of the lawyers in the team, and they were on the phone to someone, and I think they were asking that person to confirm the pronunciation of their name. And I think that was one of the first experiences that got me to think about, this is something that means a lot to many people of culturally diverse backgrounds. And it's something that is actually, it's on one hand, it's something that's easy to get right because it's such a basic thing, like how you address someone. Then again, it is also quite challenging because it can be quite awkward to go into that conversation and feel, because it can be easy to think, am I being a bit ignorant if I don't know how to pronounce your name? And therefore it can be very hard to make that sort of first conversation and say, can you confirm how you pronounce your name? And so one of the first things that I raised in my first meeting in the Cultural Inclusion Committee was, is there a way that we can make this conversation a bit easier? And I think one of the suggestions from the committee at the time was, we could potentially think about in our email signatures having a little button that you could click, and that would play an audio file of you pronouncing your name, so that we could reduce that sort of awkwardness and make it easier for people to understand how it is that you want to be addressed. And I think there were some technical issues in the background around how we could implement that, but that's been put on the back burner. But it's of course still an idea and a very live conversation that I think we can take forward.
And it's an excellent suggestion, because I know that LinkedIn has that button option now, where just right next to the profile headline, basically, there's a little speaker, and you click it if you want to record how you say your name. And I think that's another step towards just the significance of names and how important they are that when you get them right, and what it means to people when you get them right, or take the care and the effort to try and get them right. People mangle names all the time, but it's really about demonstrating a willingness to do better and to try. So I'm curious for both of you, because I think you both came through the grad program.
Yeah.
How were you in the same year for the grad program?
Yeah, we were both in the 2023 cohort. Yep.
Oh, lovely. And now co-leading the KIC. How did you get into law from each of you?
I'm happy to go first. I've been asked this question a lot and I still don't have a solidified answer. It's a combination of, there were lots of things I wanted to do at university, and so I tried and tested a few things. It's a combination of, I quite enjoyed watching Suits, which is pretty common, I think, for the younger generation.
And not at all like the real practice of law. But
No, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. But yeah, so when I originally started university, I was doing commerce and psychology. I didn't so much enjoy the psychology side of things, and I transferred into law at the end of my first year. And again, there were a few different things that I wanted to do, and I just took the punt on law. I thought, I guess it made the most sense. I think it suited my skill set the most, and so I went with that. Ended up liking it, and then as you progress through university and you obtain experience and you start to understand what you like in the law, that's how I then ended up in corporate law at Hall and Wilcox, and then that's how I more refined myself in the financial services team.
Happenstance found you here, and it just turns out that you really enjoy the financial aspect of law. What about you, Stephen?
Yeah, I think I was actually in a quite similar situation to Ash, because I also didn't go into university thinking I'm definitely going to be a lawyer. I really want to become a lawyer. It's funny because as a kid, I really wanted to be a car designer. Then I realized I had zero artistic skill and the car industry in Australia wasn't doing that well. My dad was like, "You're pretty good at tech and IT. Do you want to consider doing that?" And I thought, sure, why not? And then he suggested if you're going to do IT, you might as well do a double degree, and why not tack on law on top of that as well? And I thought, it's not a bad idea. I don't dislike law. I found it like interesting, although quite a foreign sort of world as well. But I thought I'd give it a shot, and then I realized I did quite enjoy. I enjoyed both IT and law. Wasn't sure exactly which path to go down, and then COVID happened, and so I was thinking about I'm about to graduate. I need to start thinking about getting some practical like work experience, and it just so happened that my piano teacher at the time, his teacher's husband was a barrister, and we just ended up arranging I would go to the barrister's chambers, do some research for him, and it was really through that experience and the guidance of that barrister that I found law is actually a lot more interesting and a lot more practical than what we learn at uni, or like actually solving real people's problems. And I found that just so rewarding, and I just thought, let me just apply for some grad programs, and I thought Hall & Wilcox was the best choice because obviously the smarter law ethos that could really help me also bring in some of my IT knowledge and background as well. And yeah, as soon as I landed here, I really enjoyed it, and I'm still here to this day. So that was my journey.
That journey makes a lot of sense now. And so putting the pieces of the puzzle together, now I understand why at a KIC meeting maybe last year or the year before, you were, I remember someone said in a meeting something, oh, Stephen's going to build a website or something for us or a new page. And I thought, what are we coding now? What is happening? What do you mean Stephen's going to build a website? Okay, if that's what people want to do in their downtime, I suppose. But now it makes sense. You have a tech background and a desire to introduce that into aspects of your work. Okay, great. I was thinking...
Sorry, I was going to say, Stephen, did you just decide to tack on law to your degree? You were like, you know what, I'll just tack it on the side. We'll see how this goes. That's very impressive.
Yeah, it was a lot of luck went into it as well, and good fortune, and support from family and friends as well. But I guess I am very fortunate to be where I am today.
Fallen into it. Isn't that how it happens with everyone, Ash? Did you not just tack on a medical degree to your studies? Fine, I'll do neurology if I have to. Yeah.
Part-time surgeon, part-time lawyer, part-time engineer. Yep.
Yes. Why? I guess any last comments or thoughts about this podcast season and what's in a name and the conversations that we're having with a variety of guests? Anything that you'd like to share or talk about?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick that off. Not so much any personal experiences or anything to share. I just think that this is a really good initiative in terms of progressing what we want to be as a law firm and ultimately what we want to be as a legal profession. Like, it is a very important thing to be culturally inclusive and receptive to that. And I guess we are all privileged to be in this position, and I think we really should be taking that seriously in the way that we are. And yeah, I encourage all of our listeners to just be cognizant of these issues. And this actually reminds me, Stephen and I, we met with a barrister of Chinese descent. I think it was last year. And he mentioned that he was one of the first Chinese lawyers in Australia, and he was contrasting what his experiences were like as a junior lawyer compared to what we face now. And it was quite insightful as to how lucky we do have it and how much progress we have made as a society. And I think it's now our job to continue that for the next generation.
Very well said. Well put. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Great conversations, as always. Really looking forward to continuing to speak to more people in the legal profession about their experience and what's in a name, continuing those discussions. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Again, if you have any questions or want to chat about anything that we've covered, or if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode of What's in a Name, or if you know someone who you think would be a great guest on a future episode, please get in touch. You can find our details at hallandwilcox.com.au or connect with us on LinkedIn. If you liked today's episode, please rate, review, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.
This podcast is not legal advice and should not be relied upon as such. You should always obtain legal advice about your specific circumstances.